Welcome everyone to the second session of our Sunnyvale Unity Listening Series. My name is Larry Klein and I serve as mayor for the city of Sunnyvale. The city of Sunnyvale stands united with community members calling for racial justice and an end to systemic racism. As a city, we have committed to being more transparent, to listening, and to examining our policies, practices, and programs to better serve you. We launched our listening series on June 25th to better understand the community's concerns and perspectives on a path forward for Sunnyvale. At our first general listening session, over 200 community members participated, and many shared their stories, their views, and their hopes for a better Sunnyvale. It is the young people who have fueled much of the energy surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement. So tonight, we are focusing on Sunnyvale's youth. We will be discussing public safety and schools. We will answer many of your questions that we received from students and from concerned parents, and we will continue to actively listen. Staff will document the feedback and questions we receive from the community, and it will help inform us how we move forward for both a city and as a community. Before we start, I want to thank the Fremont Union High School District and the Sunnyvale School District for partnering with us on this very important conversation. I also want to acknowledge some of the Sunnyvale leaders who are here tonight simply to listen. My fellow council members, Vice Mayor Nancy Smith, and council members Glenn Hendricks, Gustav Larson, Russ Melton, Michael Goldman, and Mason Fong, and representing the Fremont Union High School District, President of the Board of Trustees, Jeff Moe, representing the Sunnyvale School District, Board President, Michelle Maginot, and I'm also joined by Sunnyvale City Manager, Kent Steffens, and representing the City of Sunnyvale. Thanks to all of you, and thanks to each of the school board members that are also listening in. Lastly, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to all of you who've chosen to participate tonight. Your support and engagement are vital. Together, we can make our city a safe, welcoming, and vibrant place for everyone. I will now turn it over to Deputy City Manager Jackie Guzman, who also serves as the city's diversity and inclusion liaison. Jackie?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're going to start out tonight by having a moderated discussion. And I am joined by Pranay Mamaleddy, who is a student at Lynbrook High School. And he's also a treasurer of the Youth Public Policy Institute. Pranay, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Youth Public Policy Institute?
Yeah, so the Youth Public Policy Institute of Sunnyvale is an organization that's overseen by Vice Mayor Nancy Smith. And as an organization, we cover a wide range of topics like climate change, mental health for youth. And recently we've been focusing on a lot of the issues regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. And we've been trying to do our best to use our platform and position to help out with that movement and to spread the message.
Thank you, Pranay. The Youth Public Policy Institute, along with Pranay, have helped us source questions from students in Sunnyvale. And so we have a group of panelists where the first part of the moderated discussion is we're going to be answering questions from students in Sunnyvale collected by the Youth Public Policy Institute. Followed by that, we'll have an open question and answer for anybody who's joining us tonight to ask a question of the panelists or to make a comment. If you do have a comment, your comments will be limited to 2 minutes. So I'll first start out by introducing our panel. We have with us from the City of Sunnyvale, Chief Fan No, Deputy Chief Jim Choi, Captain Dan Pistor, and Lieutenant Jose Ramirez. From the Fremont Union High School District, we have Superintendent Polly Bovey, Deputy Superintendent Graham Clark. And from Sunnyvale School District, we have Superintendent Mike Gallagher and Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Dr. Tasha Dean. And we will jump right in. So I'll start out with the first question. Let's talk first about how the partnership works. What's the role of the neighborhood resource officers in our schools? And Polly and Mike, I'll throw it to you first. You both are muted.
So the role of the neighborhood resource officers in our schools is to come when we ask them to come. And in that process, when we ask them to come, it's not frequent, but when it is, it's to help us think through an issue with a student and work with the student in many different ways. I could give a number of examples, but that is one of the roles. The other part of the role is when we have larger problems. Some of you may remember a number of years ago when we were having threats to the various schools that were coming up on the internet. They were an email to the superintendent and there was a threat. We couldn't tell if the threat was real or not, and I would like to credit Sunnyvale Public Safety with being available even at 2 in the morning for us to call and have someone help us work with the FBI to actually determine before 6 in the morning whether or not the threat was real. And that let us know that we could have students come safely to school. So there are some behind the scenes kinds of efforts that happen with Sunnyvale Public Safety, and because of the relationship with our neighborhood resource officers. And then there's the times that we do call them to campus to try to think through a situation.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything Polly said, and also add the idea of prevention. So there are, for example, drills. We will consult with public safety for the safety of our campuses, locking devices, things as small as that, to access to campus, how to get off of campus safely in case of an active shooter, for example. Those types of things, if God forbid something like that should happen. Also, I think we probably take for granted, but we shouldn't, the relationship that we have with NROs and even the leadership of the police department, because our principals know, for example, that they can contact an NRO. There are certain cases where under the law we're required to contact the police. And we're much better off if we're able to contact someone in public safety that we have a relationship with and who understands our approach to student growth and our approach to discipline, rather than, I've worked in another city where you would call and you would get who you got, and they're good officers, but they weren't necessarily trained in schools. So that resource is invaluable too, that when we're required to make calls, we have someone we know and we can trust and we can problem solve together with. So that's what I would add to what Polly had to say.
And I would agree. Thank you.
Hello, if I can add something for that same question. My name is Lieutenant Ramirez, and I'm the supervisor of our crime prevention unit. And I oversee the NROs, the neighborhood resource officers in Sunnyvale. Currently, we have 3 to 4 neighborhood resource officers. And I say neighborhood resource officers, I just want to give a little background on public safety, the model that we have. Each officer that we have is a trained police officer, firefighter, and EMT. Very unique across the nation, that model, public safety. And so we accomplish our task by working with the community, and our vision and value statements, it's through excellence, professionalism, accountability, and the big point right now is community outreach, engagement, how we tackle some of the major issues that we are facing currently and in the past. And so it's through that networking that we do, that type partnership, I want to say, with our school districts, our schools, but it goes beyond that. Compared to other cities who have school resource officers who are designated for a specific school and that could be there for a long period of time. In Sunnyvale, it's kind of unique because our role and responsibilities are bigger than just the schools. We oversee our neighborhoods and local businesses too. So we handle complaints that come in through a variety of different avenues. But yes, we do have our designated neighborhood resource officer for a specific school. They have cell phones and they can be reached 24 hours a day to handle calls that maybe come in late night. And so they're very highly trained, and each officer has to go through training, the police academy, and then after that go through a very grueling field training office training protocol that lasts months. At the same time, they're dedicated to go to a fire training academy, which lasts several months, and then also have an in-house fire training related program that they have to pass. At the same time, they're trained EMTs. And so it's so valuable to have that person, that public safety officer, sometimes on campus. And I'm gonna elaborate a little bit further down when it was crucial when we had someone on campus. But just realize that we're not always on campus. What we like to focus on is education and prevention. And so our neighborhood resource officers oversee every single school in Sunnyvale, and that ranges from K through 12. Yes, we only have Fremont High is our only high school in town, but we also do have several other private high schools in our community, and also Homestead High, which a large percentage of those students live in Sunnyvale. So we have either built connections, bonds with those students, and sometimes are able to de-escalate situations because we know them and they know us, that familiar face. So some of the highlights, I told you a little bit about education, and I just want to go down some of the programs that we do serve in our community and some of the resources that we do provide. Internet cyber safety and bullying prevention program. That's not only for the students, but also for parents. And with social media and issues going on with that, the downside of social media, we're there to either mentor, educate parents and students how to safely use the internet and social media. The GREAT program, and that's targeted for elementary schools right now, but the GREAT program is a gang prevention program that we have with 5th graders. And we introduce them to decision-making, anger management, peer pressure, and treating others with respect. Also with drug and alcohol prevention awareness at all levels of age-appropriate presentations that we have for all the schools. And another thing I want to highlight is the last couple of years, I want to say last 3 years, we've been hosting our Youth Leadership Academy. And our Leadership Academy is targeting young youth in our community entering grades 7th through 9th. And so they show them about how to be young leaders in their community, offering youth opportunity to strengthen their leadership, knowledge, and skills so they can thrive at home and school, so they can succeed. And so the only way that we're able to do that is building those bonds and relationships while we're educating and mentoring these youth on campus. So it's very important that they feel comfortable, that they see that same officer that comes by and they're able to approach him. Also, we do have a Safe Routes to School program that targets and helps assist bicyclists and pedestrians safely navigate around schools. And we get many complaints of certain hotspots. We'll address hotspots for student safety, walking and riding to school. And last year I was able to participate in the Fremont High Challenge Day. And that Challenge Day, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a workshop that really brings students of all kinds, all different cliques on campus, administrators, teachers, and police officers into a workshop where you really let down your guard. And we got through and were able to get through a lot of the type of stereotypes that maybe people had of police officers, of officers having of students, of just all kinds of different things that we were able to work out. And I was pleased that I was able to participate in the program last year. But those are some of the things that we take place while we're on campus. We also, our Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety, we host our Explore program, which it's youth anywhere from 14 to 20 that are participating in the Explore program, like mini officer program, that they're trained with leadership, procedures of a police officer, of a firefighter, of an EMT. And some of these explorers are currently local high school students. And so they really get a value of an inside look of what it takes to be an officer and to show leadership, empathy, understanding, and able to listen. And I think that's where we're able to build that bridge between the community and us. Another huge thing that I was able to participate in is our Police Activities League. And when we're on campus, we're targeting students, but I mean that in a positive way. We're looking for and recruiting students to participate in programs that we provide our community. A lot of these coaches and mentors in this program are officers. We have a boxing program that anywhere when pre-COVID would have anywhere from 30 to 40 kids in there daily and learning the skills of boxing, but also being mentored knowingly or unknowing that with the young coaches and adults that were there were police officers. Often sometimes when I go to the gym as a coach in plain clothes, and then when I show up in uniform, they didn't even realize I was an officer. And so it's really breaking those bonds down. Another big program that we have right now in our Police Activities League is Bigs in Blue. And Bigs in Blue was started 3 years ago to build a stronger relationship with our community and the youth. And if we can backtrack 3 years ago, we were pretty much in the similar time that we're facing right now. We had the Baltimore issues, we had riots. And so Sunnyvale being the first city in Northern California to partner up with Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America. And what they do is a simple and novel idea is they partner police officers up with youth in our community. Really tears down those walls and those stereotypes that people could have, not just for that mentee, but also for the family that is involved with that partnership. And I believe right now, currently we have 7 to 8 mentors that are volunteering their own time to help out the community. Even though they're police, fire, and EMTs, they find the time to spend time with the youth. Oftentimes it's even going down to the local high school, middle school, elementary, and just eating a snack during recess. And so it's those really cool things that we do. Another big thing is doing our active shooter preparedness training. And we do this for every single school throughout the city, at least once a year upon request. And so we're training the administrators, teachers, and also the students how to prepare in case of an active shooter. And I wish I didn't even have to say that, but those are the current times that we are facing still. And some of the things that we have to be prepared. And so knowing that, and just for an example on that note, it was sometime last year, and to leave names of the high schools and names of the personnel that was involved, just to be general, there was an incident where a student was making threats to students at a prior high school, meaning that he was going to come to the high school and potentially shoot students, shoot administrators, and these threats were taken seriously. Those comments were relayed to another student via text message or whatnot. That other student did the right thing and reported the incident to police and also to administrators. And I think that's a valuable point. It's because that student had the trust in administrators, teachers, adults, caring adults, and the police to do the right thing. Even though that they weren't 100% certain that, that it was credible, but it was deemed credible. We were able to work our NROs were able to work that case and swiftly ended up arresting a subject at San Jose State. And he was armed with weapons, guns, knives, mace. So the credible threat was there, but it was because we built those bonds. We invested early in maybe the elementary time, the middle school time, the high school time. We were able to gain that trust from that student. And that's something that we don't hear about. And that's a good thing. Another quick example of
I'm gonna cut you off there because we have a lot of questions that we want to get through, but I thank you very much, Lieutenant.
No problem, no problem. I'm here to help. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, our next question today is, how do the Fremont Union School Districts and the Sunnyvale School District manage discipline? And what does discipline data tell us about racial disparities in schools in Sunnyvale?
Hey, good evening. My name is Graham Clark. I'm the Deputy Superintendent with the Fremont Union High School District, but I also was previously the principal at Homestead High School for about 10 years, and I worked at Fremont High School also. But I'm going to kind of go back maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had a program called Zero Tolerance, and actually we were pretty tight on discipline, and we would have things that we would definitely expel students for, and our suspension rates were higher. So looking back 10 years ago, I would say, you know, we had a firm set of rules and a firm set of consequences, and that's where things were. And if you look at our suspension rate back at that time, it's much higher than what it is now. But over the last few years, we've morphed to a more restorative justice program. And actually, we are looking for ways, and I'll just give you an example. One of the things that we used to suspend for was truancy or tardies or things like that. And, you know, when you think about it, it absolutely makes no sense to suspend a kid for not coming to school when the suspension basically kicks them out of school anyway. It really was a policy that didn't make sense. So now we were doing more counseling. We have a Saturday schools program where people can make up the time. And we also are doing more counseling and parent involvement. And if you look at our suspension rates over the last 10 years, they've really dropped. Actually, they've come down by a half to 1/3. And I would say, if you look at discipline, I kind of look at it as a pyramid. At the top of is expulsions. And as a district, we have very few expulsions, maybe 10 to 15 a year total. And that's with a population of, over 10,000 students. And then suspension would be our next intervention. And below that would be like referrals, counseling, classes, and things like that. And when we look at suspension rates as a district, I think we look at rate and not the raw number, because if you want to compare schools and districts, it's really the number of kids who are suspended, and that's a percentage of the total population. So our district's at about 2.2%. And if you look at the state and county averages, the whole state has been working on this issue, honestly, but the state average for suspensions is around 3.6%. The county average is 2.5%, and the Fremont Union High School District is about 2.10%. And below that, we also look at what are we suspending for or expelling for serious offenses. And, honestly, the more serious things are going to have expulsion or higher suspension rates, but we analyze that. We also look at the differences between race and gender, ethnicity. And, part of the question here is there a difference? And yes, it is an issue we're working on. We do have a higher suspension rate for certain ethnic groups, students of color, as compared to maybe our Asian and our white subpopulations. But those are issues that we look at every year, and our school staffs look at that. And Tasha, I don't know if you want to comment on that. Yeah.
Yes. Similarly in Sunnyvale, I've been with the district, I'm going into my 9th year, but prior to that, we had a much higher suspension and expulsion rate, I would say. But in an effort to be more restorative, as you described, Graham, we are using similar practices. We started about 9 years ago, almost on the mark, maybe right at 10, with promoting positive behavior intervention strategies district-wide. In addition to that, we have, with great intentionality in the last 5 years, kind of overlaid our socio-emotional learning with those practices as well. So our focus is there's going to be an incident. It's not if and when, but there will be an incident. And so the emphasis for our work is to understand why the incident has occurred. Why is this behavior occurring from this particular student? And it's when we can utilize the work with our principals, our social workers, and more recently, developing our multi-tiered systems of support teams in order to resolve the issue and then look at what will be meaningful consequences for students so that this particular incident doesn't happen again. Now, we can't say that that doesn't. So as Graham was describing the suspension rates, we've analyzed our suspension rates and they are very low in that 2 and sometimes even 1%. But what we are seeing is that we have some reoccurring patterns. In particular, right now, we're looking at our Hispanic male population, where we do see some significance there, and we're trying to make meaning of that suspension data. But generally speaking, our data from a district perspective is very good. For example, for expulsions, we have anywhere from 0 to 1 each year. I think we had one last year in the district, and that's the first time in 3 years that we've had an expulsion. So we do take this work very serious, and we try to let each incident be its own and not kind of put it in a pile together and try to resolve it in the same way that we resolved the last incident, because each has a unique situation tied to it, a different student, a different family, a different circumstance. And so we want to be sure we're addressing issues individually so we can have better outcomes district-wide, but more specifically student to student.
Thank you. Following up around the discipline question, under what circumstances is public safety called to intervene, and how often does this occur?
Well, so on behalf of the Fremont Union High School District and Fremont High School and Homestead, I'm going to say we call them, Sunnyvale Public Safety when we have a serious threat or when we have a medical emergency. So we from time to time, it's a large campus. Both schools have over 2,000 students, so we have medical emergencies. Certainly, if we had a threat of physical violence, a bomb threat, or some other kind of threat like that, we would call. In terms of discipline, I mean, both staffs have highly capable and qualified principals and assistant principals and deans and actually other people on campus that can help resolve routine matters. We only call law enforcement when it's a pretty serious thing. And I would say it's like an expellable thing, or an example would be, honestly, sexual assault, or it could be a fight involving, physical harm or violence. It could be a weapons issue or something of that nature. And sometimes we have an incident, and when you're on a school campus, you have the ability to investigate everything that happens within your school. But sometimes the issue involves something that's happening in the community, and we need the police department to go out and do an investigation out in the community, or with people that don't attend the school, and they can help us resolve things like that. So on a regular basis, I would say we call the police only when necessary. We handle all the routine things ourselves, and that might be 1 to 2 times a week at most of our schools.
Yes. I would say the same, excuse me, for Sunnyvale. And we also try to use them as a thought partner to know what is happening in the community, because sometimes when you're in the school, that's kind of your focus, especially for staff that may not live in Sunnyvale. So it's also very helpful to kind of get a background of the community and the things that are going on, and having the relationship that we have in particular with our NROs kind of allows us to know what those things are in order to provide maybe additional support to families at the school based upon some of the circumstances that are happening within the community.
Yeah, I think that's all really important. Our next question regards defunding the police. A lot of advocates are calling for defunding the police, specifically at schools, and redirecting those resources towards counseling and other services. So how much do our school districts spend on policing versus mental health counseling? And what would ending the NRO partnership look like?
I'll make a stab at that. So I could not agree more that counseling and therapeutic services and support services for students are critical. And we've believed that, as I believe all the local school districts have believed that for many, many, many years. So we began having full-time therapeutic services for our general education population on all the campuses in the Fremont Union High School District over 20 years ago. And in addition to that, so I think when most people think of counseling services, they think of our amazing school counselors who do college counseling, academic counseling, and are assigned to students by alphabet. And we certainly have those folks, and we wish we had more, but we have those folks and they are amazing and do great work. But in addition, for more therapeutic supports, we do have therapists on our campuses. We have a number, at least 2 on every campus. And when you combine the services we have for our general ed population and our special ed population, less our counseling services that I just described, we spend over $5 million. For Sunnyvale Public Safety, it's about $12,000 a year to create that grant or partnership that we have. So defunding the Sunnyvale Public Safety Program, or even the Sunnyvale Public Safety Program and the Sheriff's Department, which would all sum total be around $25,000, would not give us much in the way of additional therapeutic services, and I believe we'd lose some real partnership. There's another piece to the therapeutic and psychological support services that I just want to mention, and that is that Sunnyvale Public Safety, along with the City of Sunnyvale, has the Challenge Team group that meets once a month at 7 a.m., and they work hand in glove with all the agencies in the city. So public safety, the city groups, all the nonprofits in the city, to try to provide those kinds of family therapeutic supports, also food and shelter and social work kinds of assistance. So it's in that collaborative that we find all kinds of resources for our students that are much like the counseling and therapeutic services that we're able to provide on campus, and allows us to expand that to families. So I'm grateful for that partnership and the work that's done there. And we get to reap the benefits of what Mike, I'm sure, is going to talk about, which is the Columbia Neighborhood Center, which also provides guidance for our younger students as they come forward to high school.
Thanks, Polly. So the simple answer is that we actually don't spend any money on Sunnyvale Public Safety. We don't have a line item in our budget for that. We do have, and Tasha might be able to enumerate this better than I could, the amount of money that we spend on a variety of services to support students. And let me talk a little bit about our philosophy on this. So we see the mission of the district as fostering the academic, the social emotional, and the behavioral growth of all of our students. And we see those 3 areas, they're really the foundation of the MTSS, or the multi-tier systems of support that Tasha referred to a little bit earlier. Academic, social emotional, and behavioral, they're all interwoven. They all contribute to each other. So when we talk about police intervention, you're essentially talking about behavior in that case. But we know that there's many factors that can contribute to behavior, and they can be a student's basic needs being unmet, for example. And that might be conditions in the home. It could be food insecurity, housing insecurity, family problems. And that's why we contribute significantly to counseling services, social worker services. It could be, frankly, that the curriculum doesn't reflect what the backgrounds of the students, or the students aren't connecting to that curriculum. So we're spending a lot of time now focusing on culturally responsive teaching practices, and having our teachers reflect on their own backgrounds, and then the backgrounds of the students that they're serving, and then listen to the community, and listen to their students, and listen to the families, so that they can bridge that connection. And frankly, and I think this is true everywhere, a lot of times behavior is a function of, or response to, or resistance to low expectations of in the classroom. And we think we have, and I know Fremont does, the highest level of expectations for our students, but it's challenging. It's a challenge that we're constantly focusing on. So we look at this challenge as not just a behavior problem, but the relationship between social, emotional, academic, and behavioral growth for our students. And our focus as an elementary school district is on growth in those areas. So we wouldn't call the police to solve a problem. We'd call the police to partner together to meet the basic needs of students. So that's how I would respond to that. The simple answer is we don't spend money on police. We spend a lot of money on social workers, counseling, and the like. And I don't know, Dr. Dean, if you have a number for that.
Yeah. Like Polly mentioned, if we didn't have the benefit of some grants that we have support with, we would be close to that 5 million number as well. But because we have some grants, we have some partnerships with CHAC, for example, for counseling support, which affords us what we consider to be prevention services that may not come to the level of the teacher or the principal's eye, because there are those internal types of issues that students are having, whether it be anxiety, deep depression, et cetera, that sometimes can lead to more significant behavioral issues that then can lead a student dealing and having issues from the standpoint of public safety would have to step in. So we put a lot of time and effort into prevention. Polly also alluded to the Columbia Neighborhood Center, which we have a partnership with Sunnyvale City. And so that partnership allows us to provide not only support for our students, but also the families that have a need around medical, counseling needs, some of those hierarchy of needs that Dr. Gallagher talked about, whether it be food, shelter, and nutrition, for example. So we're trying to work from a prevention standpoint and not a reactive standpoint. And that really goes a long way, and it's really having a positive and supporting loving community.
Thank you. How are you ensuring that students feel safe on and off campus?
You know, on behalf of the Fremont Union High School District, I'm going to allow Chris Moore to answer. He's the assistant principal at Fremont High School.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
So thanks for having me. Thanks for introducing me, Graham, and thanks to everyone who's participating in this virtual online discussion. Like Graham said, my name is Chris Moore. I'm one of the assistant principals at Fremont High School. Honestly, students feel the safest when they are connected, engaged, and valued. You know, I've been in this particular district for a number of years as a teacher, as a coach, as a dean, and most recently an assistant principal. And I can say this. The staff here in this district strives tirelessly to make those crucial connections with kids. In addition to the hundreds of teachers who engage and support our students on a daily basis, countless other adults on our campuses work to develop these essential relationships, like Lieutenant Ramirez talked about a little bit ago. It's those non-traditional roles, those coaches, those having those interactions with kids in different ways. So for us, from our club advisors to our dedicated coaches to our incredible performing arts teachers and mentors, the adults in this district truly care about creating environments where kids feel safe. Additionally, our facilities and our custodial crew play a part in that as well. They make sure that kids walk into safe, clean, and functional classrooms and facilities. That being said, I want to take a couple minutes just to talk specifically about some of the things that we're doing at Fremont with some community partners to ensure that students feel safe at school and then to empower them to feel safe off campus. First and foremost, Fremont collaborates with our local public safety and emergency response agencies to assess and revise our crisis response plans. Lieutenant Ramirez talked a little bit about that before. It's that their involvement with us they've been instrumental in terms of assessing our safety protocols and drills. They help us reflect on those. They are willing and participants in those drills with us. They help give us valuable feedback to help shape our practice to ensure that kids are safe and adults are safe. They've helped train the staff. Then in turn, we train the students. So every year, our staff and then ultimately our students are trained regarding our emergency preparedness. In addition to providing students with behavioral expectations and a number of on-campus resources, we attempt to educate students regarding a healthy and safe school climate. Every year, we partner with our neighborhood resource officers, our NROs, to provide our students the skills and resources to prevent online bullying and teach digital safety. That's our digital safety program. I did spend some time at Homestead a few years ago as a dean. That program was alive and well there. I was trying to think earlier, every freshman, I think, at least between those two schools for probably the last 8 years have gone through that program. I mean, we're talking, even if it's 10 years, we're talking around 10,000 kids have gone through that digital safety program since we started it back in the day. And those are the types of things that we're doing to help kids ensure that they feel safe, not only at school, but also at home or off campus. In addition to behavioral support, we're always looking for ways to support students' emotional safety. So that's a big one lately as well. Adding to our incredible mental health team, which Paulie spoke about a little bit earlier, which consists here at Fremont, 4 student advocates, 3 school psychologists, and a community liaison. We recently partnered with a group called Seneca to implement an unconditional education program. And this program helps serve a number of our underserved kids and helps provide additional mental health support or more intensive mental health support. And then finally, our district has recently partnered with El Camino Health to teach suicide awareness and prevention to every single freshman at all 5 high schools, including Fremont. We did that for the first time this past year in March, and we look forward to continuing that partnership with El Camino Health to help kids regarding their emotional well-being and safety.
I know that, as you just stated, the Fremont Union High School District, as well as the Sunnyvale School District, have been putting a lot of effort in to make sure that students feel safe on campus. But there are still a lot of students who are unhappy with the relationship with police and students on campus. So the next question is, what will the Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety be doing to improve relationships and trust between officers and students? There are a lot of students that are questioning the system right now, and it is up to the Department of Public Safety, frankly speaking, to extend that olive branch, and so that they're there to help that they're here to help solve disparities.
Thank you, Pranay. That's an excellent question, and I think Lieutenant Jose Ramirez did a great job of talking about the many programs that we have here in the city of Sunnyvale, where we work with different stakeholders to provide support to our youth in our city. So I don't want to go back and talk about those particular programs that we have, but I want to talk about basically the things that we have also done outside of working with the schools. One of the things that I emphasize here in our department is that we always have to continue to work and doing the most that we can and doing outreach to our very diverse community. So a prime example I want to give you is that, when I first came here, we were very active in this program called Coffee with a Cop. And I'm sure most of you have heard about that program. And at the time, it was a very popular program for a lot of law enforcement agencies. And so we also did a lot of Coffee with a Cop events here in our city. But what I found out is that when we did these Coffee with a Cop program, we ran into this same residents here in our community. So I thought that we could do a much better job in doing outreach with our diverse community, because I want to reach a lot of community members here in our city. So 2 things that we did. One was the Walk with the Chief program that I started about 2 years ago, where I made myself available in different parts of the city at different times to meet with different community members and hear from them what are some of the issues that they want me to know. It doesn't have to do with crime issues. It could be a host of things, whether there's speeders in their particular neighborhood, whether it's interactions that our officers had with them, good or bad. I wanted to hear from them. So I did a series of Walk with the Chief events with our community members, and I got really good feedback as to what are some of the needs in our community. The second thing that we did was the Emergency Preparedness program, which is similar to the CERT program that we have here in our city, a very robust program. We have like 3 sessions per year. On average, we have 40 people that would participate in this program, where we provide them information that would help them to help us in case of a major disaster. And I felt that we could do a better job, because I know that there are certain segments in our community that are just not English speakers. And I think it would be beneficial if we reach out to them and provide the same sort of program for them. So Captain Ryan Yin, who is in charge of the emergency preparedness program here in our city, started the program. It's called LISTO, where we work with our Spanish-speaking community members and provide them the same training that we provide to our English speakers. So that is something that we did recently. The youth leadership program that Lieutenant Jose Ramirez talked about is another example where we're doing things differently, because some of the traditional programs that you have seen in the past is about gang awareness and drug awareness programs that police departments would provide, but we wanted to do something different. We wanted to provide our kids with a program where we would provide them with sessions where we have speakers, civilians, law enforcement personnel that will come in and share their perspectives on communication skills, conflict resolution, and wellness and health. And all along, the goal is not to turn our youth into public safety officers. If they want to be public safety officers, that's fantastic. But we just want to share some of the skills that are beneficial for our youth, our future leaders in our community. So our youth leadership program is totally, completely different than the traditional youth programs that you have seen in the past. So those are the things that we've done. When it comes to transparency, I would say this is that we're very transparent in terms of what we do. The department's policy manual is posted online, so everybody can see what our policies are, and it's on our Sunnyvale City website. We also posted the Internal Affairs manual. Internal Affairs is a process where we investigate on officers for misconduct allegations. So if people want to know how we hold our officers accountable, they could go onto the Sunnyvale City website and get that information from them, for them. The drone policy. Not only do we have a drone policy posted on our website, but every single time that we use a drone, whether it's for training or for an operation, it is logged and is updated in a timely manner. So anyone can go onto the Sunnyvale City website and look at what we're doing with the drone that we have. Now, having said all that, I understand that we're not going to rest on our laurels, and that people will always have questions for it, and we are open to answering questions for them. And that's why recently we have created a link on our city website on our policies and practices. There were a lot of questions a couple of months ago regarding use of force, de-escalation, the chokehold. We answer all those questions and provided the answers on our city website for people to see. Recently, we posted a record of all the officer-involved shootings, summaries of these officer-involved shootings for the past 10 years for the public to see. So I think we have a pretty good track record of being open to new programs, of being transparent, but I understand that we're not going to rest on our laurels, and it's a journey. And I think the listening sessions that we are having in these times is another indicator of our willingness to listen to our community members in terms of what can we do differently, what can we do better, and we are always open to that. And that is a commitment from me and all my department members, is that we will continue to listen and hear from people on what it is that we can do better to serve our community.
Thank you, Chief. And just as a reminder, we will have an open question and answer period along with comment period for anybody who's on this who's in this meeting later on exactly to do that, to listen and answer questions. So on to our next question. How will schools and the Department of Public Safety respond to acts of protests by students?
Yeah, that's a good question. On behalf of the Fremont District, we're going to have Principal Greg Giglio from Homestead High School answer that one. So Greg, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to sit in and listen in and hear what's going on. The subject of protests and demonstrations has come up a lot frequently, quite honestly, and it's been a pretty good opportunity for us to have a really good academic conversation with some of our students. You know, subjects like gun rights and school shootings and you know, climate change. There's been opportunities for students to get out and protest, and I think we've developed a pretty good relationship with our kids that they will actually come to us to ask questions about, you know, how can we do this in a way that we don't get into trouble or we don't, you know, cause any undue safety issues. And so it allows us to have a conversation about what your First Amendment rights are and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And in terms of what it means to do something that's civil disobedience. And, you know, with civil disobedience can come some consequences, but we want to mitigate some of the safety factors. And so we will talk to students about, you know, making sure they're not disrupting classes or that they're not doing things that are advocating the breaking of laws or you know, putting other either protesters or you know, people who are watching, put them in trouble. And so we've actually gone and helped create some safe spaces for them to protest. We've gone out and supervised. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a march that started at Homestead High School. It started on our campus and went all the way down to Sunnyvale City Hall. And so we were supervising the students just to make sure they were okay. And they actually decided to walk to the Sunnyvale, which we didn't know they were going to do. And so myself and one of my assistant principals followed along with them to supervise. We were able to communicate with our district office to let them know what was going on. We were able to communicate with the Sunnyvale Department of Safety to help us keep an eye on traffic and make sure, you know, the kids, no one was, you know, coming after the kids or doing anything like that. And ended up being able to speak to Mayor Hendricks at the time and officers at the City Hall. And so it turned out to be a pretty great experience. So, you know, we're not there to quash First Amendment rights or to tell people, you know, they can't speak their minds, but we also want to make sure that they're doing it in a way that allows them to be heard, allows them to be safe, and allows, you know, school to go and operate in the way that it wants to go and operate. So it's been a really good opportunity. And because of that one particular protest, we've had kids come up to us to say, can I talk to you about this climate change protest that's coming up and how can we organize that? And so it's been a good relationship. So, you know, while we don't want kids to do anything that will harm themselves or others, and we certainly want them in classes, we certainly understand the right and the feelings that they have to go off and protest and demonstrate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a comment here, if it's okay, because being an elementary school district, we kind of see our focus is the teaching and the prevention. So our goal is that, you know, while we have them, we want to give them the tools of advocacy, the tools to be able to protest, the tools that if something is not right, to be an upstander, to be able to have a safe adult. And so some of the practices that we try to do in order to support that work is we do put surveys out and we do put questions out to our students, both in the fall and spring, to know, well, what are they thinking about? What are they angry about? What is going on? So we can use that as a part to support our teachers who are teaching the students, but also our leaders of our campus, our assistant principals and our principals, so that they can build those relationships so that when there are challenges, they'll either go to the NRO who's on their campus or go to the principal and let them know whether that's something happening on the campus or whether that's something potentially to happen in the community. But trying to begin giving them the tools, one, to have a voice and to be able to use their voice in a way that can have the impact that they're trying to actually have. So that's a little bit how we are working to provide that support too.
Yeah, and I think all of those efforts to reach out and get students' opinions is really great. And that leads us to our next question, which is how can students most effectively reach out with concerns regarding their school environment to the Department of Public Safety or school leaders. And I think that's becoming more important, like with all of the current events.
We have our principal, Brian Emmerich, principal of Fremont High School online, and he's going to answer this on behalf of the Fremont District.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here tonight. Appreciate the fact that people are taking time to do this and talk about it and have all the groups that are involved. So the question about how students can effectively reach out with concerns, it goes back to some of the things that people have said already tonight. Chris talked a lot about it. For us, it's really about building the relationships. So we want to make sure that our students know that they can reach out to adults on campus. We want to know that they're trusted adults that they can turn to. So whether that's their teacher, it's a paraeducator, it's a custodian walking across campus or an administrator, we want them to be comfortable to reach out and share with us the concerns that they have. And, you know, we have, as Graham said, we have over 2,000 students on our campus. I know that's not true for all, but I do know that we've made some good strides. Polly made a comment about the incident that we had a few years ago over Labor Day, where there's some anti-Semitic threats that were posted on Twitter. And students emailed me. They emailed me directly to let me know, hey, this is going on. We want to make sure you're aware of it. And that was a great instance where I was able to reach out to Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety, and they were able to locate the perpetrator within hours of that evening. And as Polly said, we're able to be back in school that next week. And so the fact that students were willing to reach out to me directly as a principal with a concern they had made me feel really good. And we want to set that up so we have opportunities for more students to do that. I do during the school year, I have what's called the Principals Advisory Board. I think some of the other schools do that as well. We have anywhere from 20 25 students. We try to get a range of students that represent different groups on campus. So not just all the ASB kids, but students that represent different groups that may not be connected as well. And so we try to talk about a range of things that are of interest to them that they want to have a voice in. And so oftentimes we'll bring up some particular topics that we wanted to talk about, but we end every meeting, if you have particular topics you want us to talk about next month, let us know. So to try and create the opportunity for that voice. And then the last thing, one of the things we're talking about for next year, and it's actually Homestead's taking the lead on this, is to try to come up with a form where students can share their concerns electronically. So they could submit some forms that wouldn't be anonymous, but sometimes students aren't as comfortable going up to an adult on campus. And so the other schools are looking to sort of piggyback on the work that Homestead's doing, so we have another tool for students. Because at the end of the day, if students are comfortable and connected to school, they're going to be willing and able to reach out to us. And that's the climate that we hope to set into place.
Thank you. Tasha, did you want to talk at all about that?
I concur. He outlined many of the things that we are working to do as well in Sunnyvale. And I think the only other thing that I would add is, because we are dealing with students sometimes who are much younger, we put a lot of time into being sure that each student on our campus has at least one trusted adult on campus that they can go to, but also cultivating someone outside of the campus that they can go to. And I know I've stated this a few times, but you know, I think it is important to have presence of the NROs at a time when they're not needed, meaning they come, they provide education, or they come to the graduation, or they come to the band concert, or whatever it is, so that when students see them in the typical school day, it feels more comfortable to them to go with an issue when they feel like this is an issue for public safety, for example. So we put a lot of time into that one, at least one. We want many, but we want to be sure that each student on the campus has at least one trusted adult that they can go to if they feel harmed. And then in addition to that, if for some reason students just may feel like they can't communicate at the campus level, so we have a forum for them, and many of those correspondents come to me directly so that they have another forum to go to if they feel that for some reason this is not something they want to communicate on the campus. They have a higher level to go to be sure that their voice gets heard, whether it's written, phone call, or some other type of forum to get that information.
Thank you. The next question was going to be around transparency and DPS, but Chief, I think you covered that in your last question. So I'm going to throw you a similar question, which is, what if there are concerns with a DPS officer interaction? What should students or community members do?
I think if there are any concerns on our website, we have a section that is titled Compliments and Concerns. So people can communicate with that. People can communicate to us by using that method, or they can simply call a non-emergency number and ask to speak to a supervisor, or they can send an email to me directly. Quite frankly, that's how often we get the information from people when there are concerns. And I can tell you, as a practice, we make it a point to respond to the individuals within 48 hours when we get those concerns raised to us. And obviously, if it's anything really serious, we will act on it immediately. So I would encourage people to use those methods to communicate to us. I do want to take this opportunity to answer a question that I did not answer, the last question, because I think there was a question about helping solve disparities, right? And so I've been in law enforcement for a little bit over 31 years. And during my time, I've sat on several juvenile justice bodies in Santa Clara County. And I want to let people know that Santa Clara County has been working on reducing disparities, not only in the criminal justice system here in our county, but also with our educational system. So the county has a lot of stakeholders that have worked on these particular issues. And when we talk about restorative justice or reducing the school to prison pipeline, all these issues are very familiar to me. And I know that in talking to the educators here, they understand those issues really well also. And we have worked really hard in reducing the number of juveniles in the juvenile hall system. In fact, the numbers have really decreased over the last 5 years because of the efforts by all the stakeholders in the county. And Graham had mentioned about the reduction in number of suspensions and expulsions. That's absolutely accurate, because if we were to have this conversation about 10 years ago, I think police officers would have been called on every single incident that has now been crime related to handle. But I think as a county, we have really made a lot of progress in moving away from that model and recognizing, understanding that the role of law enforcement is not enforcement. It is there to support the educators. It is there to build relationship with our youth, and it is there to provide prevention programs and connect with our youth. It's not all about enforcement. And I think we went away from that model a long time ago. So there's been a lot of progress that has been made, but I also recognize the fact that disparities do still exist, and we still need to work on it. And I think everybody here is committed to continue to work on it until we eliminate this particular issue in our community.
Yeah, thank you for that. Our last question, and this is open to everyone on the panel. Is there anything else you'd like all the parents and students who are attending today's town hall session and listening session to know before we go to the public comment part of this?
I'll start on that one from Sunnyvale School District perspective. You know, and I'm sure Polly will say the same thing, our number one priority is safety. And when we look at safety, it's not just physical safety, the physical safety of our students, it's also the social emotional safety of our students. And as I mentioned before, and Tasha has elaborated upon, we spend considerable resources and professional development around the topics of social emotional learning and supporting social workers and counseling services. And we've been talking in this forum about it seems like the foundation of this forum is almost the typical school year, and we're about to go into a very atypical school year with all distance learning. And so if there was one thing that I'd want parents to know and students to know, it's that all of our counseling staff, all of our social workers, There's one social worker that I see in the audience. They're all on the job. So please reach out to us. Please reach out to your contacts at the schools, your principals, your teachers. If there's a need that you have, our staff is still ready, actually more ready than ever to assist families in this very difficult time.
So Mike's right. I will echo that. Our priority is safety, well-being, and preparing our kids for their future. And so this is an unprecedented time, and there are enormous pressures on all of us. And what I would say is there was a question in the chat about why don't you do more? And that's a complicated question. I mean, I think we continually have been striving to find ways to do more in terms of counseling and support services for kids within the limitations of our budget. And we will continue to do that. But I think what's been interesting and powerful and informative here is that we are hearing from students who are upset, who are afraid, who are worried. And I do want to hear their voices. I do want to hear what is worrying them. And so like Mike, if you've got an issue that you need counseling or support help, know that that's there, even though you're not in school and you can't see and touch those people. They're all here and ready for whatever they can do to help you. And that includes our teachers, our administrative staff, our guidance and counseling staff. And because of many of the things that are going on in the world, we're hearing about so many issues that are very powerful and very much on the minds of everyone in our community, especially our youth. And I'm so proud of them for speaking up and being willing to tackle these problems and wanting very much for us to hear their concerns. So this has been one way of our doing this. I'm grateful to the city and Sunnyvale Public Safety for having this forum and allowing us to hear from students. We will continue to have more forums and ways that we can hear from our youth in small groups and large groups. I think we all know on this call, we can do better. And that's part of our commitment. Our commitment is to do the very best we can every day and know that we're going to start tomorrow trying to do even more and do better. So thank you for being open about your concerns. And I want to thank everyone on this panel for being willing to participate in this kind of forum where we let people know that we're willing to be out there, vulnerable, listening to what their needs and thoughts are, because I know that we are, and we really do deeply care. We're about to start this very challenging semester, and we're going to be able to make it through if we can keep working this way together.
So I have two things to close. I think the first thing is my goal and my desire is that the first interaction that a youth in our community has with one of our public safety officers is that it's a positive interaction and it's in a non-enforcement capacity. So that is my desire. And the second thing I want everyone to know is that we invite the tough questions, the hard questions, the difficult conversation, and we embrace all those things, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are here to serve our community. And so I want to thank everybody for being here also on the panel. And I want to thank the participants for being here. And I look forward to the questions that they may have for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our moderated discussion, and we're going to move over to an open question and answer or comments section next. We have until 7:30. For anyone that wants to ask a question, there is a Q&A little button that you can press on the bottom. Go ahead and go in there and ask your question. If you would like to make a comment, then just type in comment so that I know that you're going to be making a comment instead of a question. And we will start going through that. But first, we're going to take a little break. So we'll take a little break and be back here at 6:45. Okay, it's 6:45 and we are going to jump back in with our open question and answer period. So I did receive a few questions by email from members of the public. So we'll start with those first and then move to the questions that have been asked by attendees during this session. So the first question is from Ben Hertzberg. Where can I find information about incidents where officers on campus were needed? And this is directed at the schools.
Hi, this is Graham Clark of the Fremont Union High School District. And I just want to tell you one of the hard things about sharing student discipline issues is there's a rule, it's called FERPA. And basically what it says is we really can't share any student records, whether it be behavior, academic, or discipline records with any member of the public. We can only really share it with themselves and with their parents, their family. And so we really are not able to share discipline records of a student involving any police interaction. We do have a database that's on the California Department of Education. It has our expulsion and our suspension data, but it doesn't necessarily tell you if the police were involved.
And Chief, do we have any aggregate data on responses to schools?
I think we do. We can get that information, but it's a little bit more complex, because if you're looking at specifically the response to the schools by the NROs, we wouldn't be able to get that information, because at times we'll have a combination of NROs and just regular patrol officers that will respond to schools on a call for service. And so if you want to separate it out and see the number of incidents that NROs would respond to a school, that would be very difficult to get. But the overall total number of incidents that we respond to, we can get that.
Manjuna, how are students made aware of policies or procedures for involving public safety officers, and how do you ensure smooth and non-intimidating interactions?
I'm sorry, Jackie, can you repeat the question?
Yes. So how are students made aware of the policies or procedures for involving public safety officers? I think that's more of a school question. And how are you ensuring smooth and non-intimidating interactions? And that's probably more DPS.
Yeah, I'd say at the start of the year, and we generally do this in each class, and the administrators of the school will go around and they'll go over the main classroom procedures and expectations, and they'll give a briefing to each class. And they do it in small groups. And at that time, we'll talk about what the regular school rules are, but we'll also talk about, the more significant things. And, if it became an issue of sexual assault or weapons or something like that, we would call the police. And at that time we would tell them, these are the situations that we would call the police for. And, there are some times where the incident happens, there can be school consequences and also police consequences. But I would say the start of the school briefings are the main way. We also have in the spring something that we call the annual notification or annual mailers. It does go out to each family and they can read about these policies in that also.
So we have policies in place to hold our officers accountable, and we expect them to be professional and treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of their age, demographics. But in terms of specifics and how we soothe out those interactions, I'm going to refer to Lieutenant Jose Ramirez, because he works closely with the school, so he may be able to provide a little bit more information on that. Lieutenant Ramirez?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just had to unmute my video. Yeah, a lot of the contacts that we have with students are just that, hopefully positive interactions with members of kids at school from all ages. one, the educational, but a lot of time what I encourage is for our NROs to stop by one of the athletic events, right? A football game, passing by, not just doing security, but that's where those interactions happen, that they're a positive interaction and it's non-law enforcement. And so I mentioned earlier that we were involved with the Fremont Challenge Day program. On that day, you had a couple of NROs and myself out there in uniform, and it's a really touchy-feely program, but we let down all our guards and we're over there singing silly songs and dancing with administrators and students, and they really were able to see a different side of law enforcement. It's not always because we have the shield that we carry a heavy stick. It's we carry a hand that's out there is trying to just extend and try to build relationships. So it's just really those routine just conversations. How are you doing? Always walking down the hallways and be willing to just maybe spot out a person out there that's kind of isolated. Just go over to say hello. How are you doing? You mind if I sit down and eat lunch with you? It's just those little ordinary contacts that I think that really tear down those walls and that misperception that students may have of law enforcement or the uniform.
Yeah, if I can add to that real quick. So I think it's an investment from public safety to all of our students within our jurisdiction. The school boards and the educators have said, safety is number one. And the reason for that is the reason why we have all these different programs. That is also to build the trust between the community, the students, and our officers. When you talk about not intimidating the interaction, I think a lot of the questions that are being asked today, or a lot of the concerns, is what you see all the time that's being played over is the contacts that are rough, or the contacts that seem to be more of where officers are arresting students. Well, we're trying to break that mode, and that is that the relationship we're building with the schools and the student, to let them know that, hey, our priority is not enforcement, it's education, prevention, it's their safety. And these programs are there to build that trust and build that relationship. And I just want to emphasize one thing is, how do you gauge if that is working? Well, I think we said it earlier, the students have reached out to officers, directly to NROs, to the staff on threats that they felt that was potentially against their schools. And we have seen the outcome, positive outcomes, where potentially have prevented mass shootings, threats against certain elements or certain groups within the schools. So I think that is the gauge, and that is what we're doing to kind of show that non-intimidating interaction. So if people are asking, well, why are we there? Why are we doing this? I think this answers itself, as that is the sole purpose, one of the main priorities. So.
Okay. Next question from Chris Go. What resources are available for students in crisis, and how are students made aware of those resources?
Yeah, I'd like to, go ahead, Polly. Yeah, I'd just like to build upon the resources we talked about a little bit earlier with regards to our social workers and our therapists that are on campus. So at the beginning of the year, much like Graham spoke about, we kind of orient not only our students, but also our parents and our staff to our protocols. Like, if I see these signs or these needs in my classroom, what do I do? Who do I go to? So we start every year with an orientation of everyone about that, so that they're clear who to go to when they have a need, and also to recognize what are the signs of someone who might be in crisis. That's really important, so that the crisis doesn't actually occur, hopefully fully. So that's kind of how we try to approach a crisis. And then actually, if there is one, all of our social workers who are on site, our therapists and our interns who work to do that, support when there is a crisis on the campus. And then they work with the school leadership team. And if additional support is needed, whether that's getting the NRO in for a particular situation, to get them the support and the mental health that they need, then we do that as well.
So ours is very similar in the explanations at the beginning of the year that Graham talked about. There are conversations with classrooms about resources. Sometimes once isn't enough. There's obviously some information on our website, but all our teachers and our staff are trained in the same way that Tasha was speaking of, to both recognize and be sensitive to and aware of the kinds of issues that might be happening with their students. There's a lot of work with many of our staffs around trauma-informed care. And we know to refer. So parents can refer, other students can refer a student, the student can refer themselves. They can walk in the office and find someone to speak with. So that's how we work at it. I think with 2,000 plus students, there's always new ways we have to think about and work on to make sure that everybody knows and knows when the time of need occurs, because you might have heard it 2 or 3 months ago, but until you really need that help, it might not have been a high enough priority to remember. So we need to keep reminding our students and make sure everyone knows the kinds of resources that are available and within our schools. And as Tasha said, we can also refer out.
And I want to add too that we support the schools by having our NOs conduct suicide prevention sessions to our youth. And all of our officers are trained on crisis intervention. And on top of that, we have a goal of providing additional crisis intervention training for officers. And the goal is to get all the officers to get that enhanced training, which is a 40-hour course training. And so far, we have about 67 officers in the department that have received the enhanced training. So all officers have the basic training on how to recognize when people are in crisis. I think those are valuable tools, and that's where we support the schools also in that regard.
That I'm going to ask from our the submissions in writing is from Darius Bargy. I want to make sure that Nathan Lee, Maya Tate, and Bill Hilton are ready to ask their questions. We'll go to you next. So from Darius, how do Sunnyvale schools plan on destroying the school to prison pipeline? How are zero tolerance policies and practices that hinder young students from the ability to grow and learn from mistakes, which further criminalizes them, prioritized over counseling and mental health resources and community accountability?
Well, boy, that's a question. And I don't think we have evidence that we are a school to prison pipeline in our schools. But we still want to make sure that we do the best to work with restorative justice. I think Graham and numerous people have addressed this on this call. We have been working to not do things based on zero tolerance. We do agree these are youth that need to grow and learn, and that's our focus. We've heard that from everyone on the call, and that is indeed our focus. So that's why you're seeing a huge reduction in suspensions and expulsions. That's why we are not calling police for mental health or other kinds of concerns. It's only in the most significant of cases. And so I agree that we have to continue to work to improve the relationships and find additional resources and make sure students know about those resources. But we believe we have been working for some time, and we will continue to work to make sure that pipeline doesn't exist.
And I would just like to build on what Polly has already stated, but the comment or the question was zero tolerance. First of all, we're not trying to teach students to be tolerant at all. We're trying to teach them to be inclusive and understanding of the students, the staff, and the people that they're around. Because tolerance is not sufficient, first of all. So we are really trying to become more inclusive of those that we interact with on a daily basis.
Okay, so now we'll go to Nathan Lee, followed by Maya Tate and Bill Hilton for questions. So Nathan Lee, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, which question would you like me to ask?
Your first question was about diverting the focus to local businesses, but you can ask whatever question you want. I'll just put you on the list.
Okay. Can I ask a few at once, or should I wait?
We have many people asking questions, so we'd prefer if you asked one question, and if we can come back to you once everybody has gotten a chance to ask one question, we will.
Sure. So I was wondering, I know police officers are legally not required to actually protect citizens. There's like a Supreme Court case ruling. I don't have the actual name of that, but I can send it in the chat if you'd like me to. So I was wondering if school resource officers are held to a higher standard.
I'll speak on that behalf, Nathan, as the deputy chief in charge of the NRO program. I want to say all of our officers are held to a higher standard. Of course, that's just lip service, and this we can show you that we hold ourselves are accountable. Now, as far as you're absolutely right, if there's no duty to act, however, that's not a good police model for us. When I've spoken earlier about safety being number one, so I don't know of an instance where our officers would not have acted if there's a danger to the school staff, to the students, or to our community members.
Okay, thank you. So the next question comes from Maya Tate. Maya, if you can unmute yourself, and we'll cue you up to ask your question.
So Jackie, I don't see Maya on the attendee list at the moment.
Okay, so she might have dropped off. Okay.
Yeah, if anyone knows her, feel free to reach out to her and ask her to rejoin so she can provide her question.
Okay. So we'll go to Bill Hilton. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I was struck by the reference of Lieutenant Ramirez to interacting with students in boxing and a little later in football games. I wonder if there are specific outreach efforts toward female students by the NROs and other police officers.
I'll go ahead and answer that question. All our programs are co-ed, and oftentimes we have plenty of female boxers, Fremont High School female boxers, Homestead High female boxers, and also, so we just don't discriminate our programs, our outreach programs, just to young boys. We do our outreach programs to both genders, young kids, young boys, through all our programs. I know I highlighted boxing, we have baseball and flag football, but another program that I want to highlight that we do also is college tours. And so we've taken kids, middle school age kids and high school kids, to Santa Clara University. And yes, they're chaperoned by officers in uniform, because it's that time where I want to break down those walls, like, hey, this is just a normal guy, normal person, and build those contacts in a non-criminal aspect. And so recently we chartered a bus and we took close to 30 kids to West Valley Junior College, and then also to San Jose State College, to expose them to education, higher learning. A lot of these kids don't really see it as a possibility of them attending school and college, and maybe they have poor grades. But it's those kids that just need a little help, a little push, a little encouragement, and potentially could be a student at one of the local universities.
Yeah, and I just want to add to the Explorer program that Lieutenant Ramirez mentioned earlier. It's a co-ed program. And the Bigs in Blue program, that's a co-ed program also. And we also have a program that we participate in where we have our female public safety officers would participate in this county program to work with our young female high school students if they have an interest in a career in fire. And so we do participate in a lot of those programs.
And Jackie, I think Maya is back on the call. So if you wanted to.
So we'll go back to Maya Tate. Maya, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Cool, yeah. I'd like to understand why the police department is so resistant to letting other social services and social workers take over for all these jobs that they seem to be doing. They seem to be providing counseling and community outreach and college tours and, you know, trying to provide equity. And I don't understand why they feel that they are the only ones who can be doing this, and why they're resistant to having their funding, you know, moved in the direction of these services that have repeatedly proven, you know, scientifically with data to back it up, that they are much more effective to students and much more effective for, you know, the long-term good of these students, and are not as traumatizing as having to experience, you know, being around a police officer, especially if you're a person of color. I know for me, I have not had a single positive experience with a school resource officer. I'm a queer woman of color, and it makes me extremely uncomfortable that they are in so many situations and that I feel would be better served by a youth counselor or a trained teacher, or even just like a parent from the community. So I'd like to understand why they are holding on so strongly to all these different jobs instead of giving up some money and some time to let other people who I think are more qualified to do it.
So thank you for the question. And in my experience, law enforcement has been supportive over the years in terms of providing additional funding resources to other social services like mental health and youth programs. And as a profession, we still advocate for those programs. But in terms of the funding that you talked about on having other professionals respond to certain calls, I think we are open to hearing what people have to say. I don't think it's accurate to say that we are resistant to the recommendations or ideas that we're hearing. I think all these ideas and recommendations are relatively new, and I cannot speak on behalf of all the chiefs in the country, but for myself and my department, I can say that we are always open to hearing what people have to say. And lastly, I want to say I'm sorry that your interactions with some of law enforcement personnel have not been positive, but I want to let you know that it's my commitment that for all my department members to work hard and continue to earn the trust from everyone that we come in contact with. And so if the interactions were not good, I want to hear about them. And I want to see if there's anything that we can do to improve the interactions that we have with you. So thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I'm really glad you're open to hearing and listening. I think the common frustration is that we would like not just openness, but for you to be changing instead of just constantly listening. And I think the most effective way for these negative interactions to decrease is to have people who wear your uniform be off the campuses that I go to school at. Thank you.
So we will move on to our next question. So Lucas Morales, you'll be up next, followed by Yannick Omicton and Benjamin. So Lucas, you're on.
All right, hopefully you can hear me now. So I've asked a couple questions in the chat, including, so Polly Bove, you've stated a little bit about earlier, you said, quote, you wish that we could have more counselors at schools. And I was wondering, like, if that's not, for you to use the word wish as if it's out of your power, but it seems like something that you could actually do, or you could help influence. So I'm just wondering why that hasn't been done yet. And then have more questions after, but Polly, if you'd like to respond first.
Sure, I'd be happy to respond. So I've worked for this district a very long time, and I worked very hard to get the counseling services we have in place. I've been committed to it. I was trained as an MFCC. I believe in it in every way possible. That's why we have licensed people on the campuses. More of anything right now is hard for schools. We simply do not have the resources to increase. We do have the resource, and have, in fact, used our resources to change our priorities so that these counselors are available. In terms of adding to what I would call what you might be calling our counselor ranks, I think this is an ongoing discussion that we have all the time, and we're trying to prioritize the triangular system that you were hearing Graham describe. So what are the services all kids will get? What are the services that the next group will get, and so forth. So the tiered intervention is something we're all committed to. If we could have more services, we would. And I think, as I said before, we added a social worker a few years back, and once the grant went away, we found the funds to continue to pay for her. We have partnered with a number of groups in the community and continue to grow those partnerships so that we can try to provide additional services. If you have some services you know of that might be useful for us to do, we'll certainly investigate that. So it really is like any other issue in our schools. A matter of dollars. It is as if we have dollars sitting and we're wondering what to do with them, but there are things that we are legally obligated to do and provide. We certainly need to make sure we have enough courses for kids to get into college and to graduate from high school, and the support services they need academically. And then we also care about their social emotional well-being. So it's a combination. Our budget's a very public document, and you're certainly welcome to look at it. Maybe you'll see something we're missing, but I know this is a high priority for all our staff. And we have a system, by the way, that people's salaries are done by formula, and there's some bills we pay off the top. And in other words, we all prioritize them. The therapists are something every group, labor group, and every administrative group in our community, in our school district prioritize, and we pay them off the top. So they are a high priority. We just don't have additional dollars. We're just looking for other systems.
All right. So, I mean, if we're trying to keep the same amount of people just for budget reasons.
Lucas, I'm going to stop you because we have people that haven't had a chance to ask a question. So I'm going to go through those folks to make sure everybody has at least a chance to ask one question. And if we have time, we'll go back and give everyone an opportunity to ask a second question. So next is Yannick Omicton, followed by Benjamin, followed by Melissa.
Hi, I'm really thankful that y'all have spoken about some of the efforts that have already been going on to address the discrepancies between disciplinary action against Black and Latinx students versus other groups. It's, you know, despite all that, those discrepancies persist, and it's hard to sort of get a good sense of what has happened and where the various stakeholders are going, where the district is going, where Sunnyvale Public Service is going, where the county is going in terms of revising plans, making new plans, and sort of understanding what the vision is for restorative justice and a kind of equitable justice that our Latino students deserve in our district in FUHSD. So I'm wondering if there's some possibility, some sort of document or record of what has occurred, what kind of policies have been implemented that would sort of fall under the restorative justice umbrella, so that the community can hold the district and the various organizations accountable, and what kinds of documents and sort of strategies are being prepared right now that will sort of further this work. So we can understand sort of from a bird's eye view and in great detail what has been done and what is going to happen.
You know, I'll just answer Yannick on behalf of the Fremont district. I mean, it's a great question. So in terms of school plans and work like that, we have a couple of guiding documents. I would say one document is we do an annual school plan. And within that annual school plan, you'll see lots of data. You know, we look at student achievement data. We also look at attendance data. We look at campus climate data or discipline data. So those are all things that we look at on a regular basis. And schools do develop individual plans and metrics that they're looking at with regard to that. We also have an annual school safety plan, which looks particularly at, you know, school safety as, you know, would be drills, fire drills, response to different emergencies, but campus climate is also part of that. And I would say over the years, it has been a focus of looking at campus climate data racially and ethnically, and seeing how it breaks down. And I would say if you were to look back 10 years ago and look at where we've come, there's been two big emphases. And I would say one is it was spearheaded by the state, but we used to have a suspension code K, and that was for insubordination. And if you look at, what is insubordination, it's kind of hard to really define what it is. And, if you get suspended for that, it's one of the things where if you look statewide, there's a lot of students being suspended for K. We've really looked at reducing the number of kids suspended for code K or insubordination. And the second one is truancy and drug use. We used to suspend quite a few students for truancy, which is cutting school or being tardy, and then also drug use. We have really tried, if we can, to do a different approach, a restorative justice approach with Saturday school counseling or things like that. And I would say if you look at the suspension data ethnically, it breaks down the same way. When we reduce the suspension rates, we are reducing it for all races, all genders, but it is also, I think, in some ways closing the gap between, there's still a gap, but we are closing it.
Okay. So,
and just to kind of build on that, because I think the other part of the question was regarding, well, what are the strategies that you're doing now? And so just given the pandemic and given how people are feeling or not feeling about that, that's a practice that we've been working on in providing training to our classroom teachers, social workers, kind of supporting that work. What is trauma-informed care? What does that look like? What does that look like for me in my classroom when I'm teaching, for example? So even though we will be returning in virtual learning, it's going to be even more important for us to work with our school teams to recognize those things for students that they're just getting to know on a screen, if you will. So the strategies that we're looking at now are those things, like how do we do this virtually and have as much, if not more, impact in recognizing students who may need additional support and guidance to be successful.
Okay, so the next question is going to be Benjamin, followed by Melissa. Benjamin, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello. I was wondering on the curriculum for digital safety and the other programs, are they available for the general public to review and give feedback on, or are they closed? And then my other question isn't particularly relevant, and I'll bring it up another time. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and answer that question regarding the digital safety classes. As I don't believe that they're open to the public, but it's through our words of transparency. I think that we can offer that. Like I said, each year we have a cyber safety class with all our freshmen. And also we also offer that same class to the parents for what the parents should know. And so a lot of times that those classes are open to parents or the public if you would like to attend. And so I think going in this certain area of COVID, I think we may have to do some digital learning as far as Zoom presentations and stuff. And so we'll probably get that information out to the school district, and knowing the date and time, you probably attend.
Yeah. And if I may as well, I've definitely, helped facilitate that training through Sunnyvale Department of Public Safety over over a couple different schools, and just to know that the majority of that content is based on research from law enforcement officers around the state and social media companies. So, for instance, a lot of the main contributors to the digital citizenship program has been developed in coordination with Yahoo, and many of the presenters and many of the folks around the state go to Yahoo for this additional training to be able to do that training and then come back to their particular sites to facilitate those workshops. So I definitely agree. I think we need to think differently. We as a school district typically run that training in September or October, that kind of being up in the air and kind of this new kind of our new frontier of Zoom land for most of what we do. I do agree that it's worth revisiting and offering those things differently, but then also providing those resources to students and families as we move forward too.
I agree.
Okay, so our next question is going to be from Melissa, followed by Jeanette Brambilla. Melissa, if you can unmute yourself.
My question is, where can we find the disciplinary and complaint history against officers that work directly with students or ones that arise directly from campus interactions?
So part of moving forward with being transparent, we are looking at providing information on the number of complaints that public safety has received over the years and the disposition of the complaints. Under the law, Peace Officer Bill of Rights, we are limited in terms of providing the names of the officers linked to the actual disposition of the case. And so we cannot do that, but in the spirit of being transparent, we are in the process of looking at providing the information that you have mentioned to members of the public and make the information available on our city website.
Okay, our next question is from Jeanette Brambilla. That'll be followed by Benjamin Hertzberg.
Hi, good afternoon. I was just wondering, has there been a conversation in regards to maybe hiring interns for counseling purposes? Since I know that I think Polly mentioned that there's not enough money or funding for that.
We do use interns and that are monitored and supported by our own licensed folk. And there's nothing wrong with interns, they're great. But often when we're dealing with cases in the school, we appreciate the kind of experience that our fully licensed folks have. But of course, there's a way to extend it, and we have when we can. So it is a good strategy to extend those resources. And if they are supported internally by one of our own licensed people, then we can be sure that the particular situation gets a full range of care. Because when you're an intern, you're learning. And you could be outstanding in so many ways, but you probably occasionally need the support of someone that's had that experience. So yes, we do use them sometimes when they're available, and our own people can oversee them.
Yes. And in Sunnyvale, we use them quite extensively, actually, through our collaboration with CHAC, who supports interns getting the training that they need. And we mentioned earlier in the presentation, our Columbia Neighborhood Center, oftentimes we will also have interns as a part of that program. And our district social workers provide the supervision and direction for them. So we see it as a very important opportunity. One, it allows us to do some prevention work, but it also allows us to provide really concrete training and support to those new professionals coming into the field. So we actually do both for Sunnyvale as well.
Okay, next up is Benjamin Hertzberg. Benjamin, you're...
Hi. Is it okay if I ask a question not directly related to schools and youth?
If it's public safety related, I'm
Yeah.
assuming?
Okay. Earlier, Chief No said that there are policies in place to address cops when they act incorrectly, when they do something wrong. And I'd like to bring up a court case that happened about 8 years ago with a police brutality incident in Sunnyvale against a certain Lee Bagley. Lee Bagley, apparently there was a warrant out for him. He had, it was alleged that he made false 911 calls and police came and kicked down his door and basically beat him up. He said that they kicked him in the face repeatedly and released dogs on him. And he sued a few years later. The cop that was kind of leading the brutality was Jeremy Lima. And I couldn't really find anything what happened with this court case. So I emailed a few people, and somebody on the force told me that he received a settlement of $150,000. So one, I want to know why that's not public information if the city of Sunnyvale is dishing out taxpayer money for these settlements. And two, it doesn't appear that any disciplinary action was taken against Jeremy Lima. He's still on the force today. And on one of the documents, I saw that Captain Dan Pister was present. So I was wondering if he could elaborate on what happened there, or if we can know more about the disciplinary actions that were taken, or what policies are in place where when a settlement is actually given out, how can we work to avoid that in the future? How do we know that this isn't going to happen again? Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to let you know that, like I mentioned earlier, under the law, Peace Officer Bill of Rights, we cannot disclose any information if there is any discipline at all with any officer. The second point is that in litigation issues, I am not at liberty to talk about cases that we have processed through the lawsuit process that we had in place. So I can't talk about that. But I want to reassure you that anytime that there's an incident that that has occurred that gave rise to either an internal affairs complaint or a lawsuit, we always review our policies and practices to see if there's anything that we could have done differently to avoid having that happen again, or whether the officers did everything they could in that particular situation. And unfortunately, the outcome didn't come out the way that all parties would want that outcome to happen. And so in terms of asking for the information, you have every right, just like everyone, to put in a Public Records Act request for any information that you want to know about the city or the department. And we will work closely with our city attorney's office to ensure that whatever information that you are allowed to have, we will provide that information. But the law also does not allow us to produce certain information. And so we have to work within the law regarding providing the public information that they have asked for. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't done so, if you wanted to know anything about, policies and practices of our department or even the city, you should put in a Public Records Act request, and we will process it accordingly.
Okay, we're going to take just one more question from Ria Chaudhry. Ria, if you can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ria, and I'm a rising senior at Lindbergh High School. Before I start my question, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Generally, I'm a very strong student. I'm a member of my school's ASB, and I was one of 2 juniors last year selected by our administration for the Optimist Award. However, very early this year in January, I got really sick. And, I was missing whole weeks at a time. And I got all these letters, from the district office and everyone saying, like, you're becoming a truant. This is completely unacceptable. Even when I was submitting all this paperwork, I was submitting my blood tests that I was getting from the hospital, everything that was going on, I was consistently submitting. And obviously, I'm taking however many AP honors classes, and it's incredibly hard to keep up. I personally got lucky. Our in-person grades were wiped, and then I did really well in online learning. And my parents were able to disregard the very strongly worded letters we got from the district and move forward. But I can't help but think, if I didn't have my parents to drive me, how would I have gotten to school early to take all these makeup tests? If I was in a slightly more difficult situation, if I had familial responsibilities and I had that continuing pressure, or if it had taken me longer to recover, how would I have been able to get back? I know that you guys have removed suspensions for truancy, and for that, I'm very grateful. And I know many people in our district are too. But you have to consider the individual nature of our schooling and that it is very intense. And the punishments that are currently in place for truancy, rather than the assistance that these students need in their individual life situations, is just not there. One of the things I want you guys to really talk about is releasing truancy data, especially as it affects different minorities in our area, and what you guys are doing to help students who are truants, because as I hope that my story shows in some ways, that they're not truants by choice. Many of these students have other factors going on, whether it is illness or mental health or a familial situation. And I think as a district, it's important to be empathetic and cognizant of these students and what they need. And I think our district could do a better job of serving these high achieving students, regardless of their home situation. I know I'm out of time, but thank you guys for listening. Hope you can address that.
So we're out of time, but if we could quickly answer that question.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that story. It sounds like, you know, honestly, there's a difference between being absent and being truant. And so somebody who has a medical issue, doesn't allow them to come to school. We do have other programs to support them, and it sounds like something didn't happen. And we don't probably have the time to really discuss it now, but if you'd like to give me a call, I'd like to look into that with you. But basically, we do have students sometimes who have an illness, and it's a really bad one. We can put them on homeschooling. We have other ways we can intervene. And honestly, when you're absent from work, the way the state law works is you're supposed to be allowed to give an adequate time to make up the work that you missed when you're out sick, and that's really the way it should be working.
Yeah. And if I can just say, I just want to repeat something Graham said. What was going on for you is not truancy; it was illness, and so there's some miscommunication that happened here, and I'm extremely sorry that happened. So I hope you will email Graham.
So thank you, everyone. That concludes our program. We're just going to have some parting words from Mayor Klein. And thank you, everybody, for participating. We're sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but we will be looking at the questions and potentially putting those up on an FAQ. Mayor? Mayor, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie. So I want to thank everyone for joining tonight's dialogue. I hope you found it informative. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions and shared their stories, your concerns, and hopefully your vision for a better Sunnyvale. You know, we invite you to visit sunnyvale.ca.gov/unity to subscribe to the email list to stay informed for upcoming listening sessions and our transparency efforts. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Stay safe. Remember to wear your mask and have a good evening. Thank you.